Hi guys, and welcome to another video. Today we're going to be mapping out the main structures of the circulatory system in the horse's digit, so essentially from the fetlock down. We'll mainly be focusing on the locations of the arteries, since that informs us of the locations of the nerves and veins as well. You may remember the term nerve bundle or neurovascular bundle from the last video, which means that the artery, nerve, and vein are all rolled up together into a cord. But we will cover the three main venous plexes of the hoof as well, since they're important too. If you're new here, hi, my name is Julia Walker, and I make videos going over the main topics that come up on certification exams for farriers. I'm attempting to save everyone some time while they're studying these topics, hopefully without making any factual errors along the way. And if you're not a farrier, that's totally okay too. I just like talking about anatomy and breaking things down, so hopefully this is helpful for you. But with that, let's jump in. First things first, we'll talk about the arteries. Now, if you've looked at the diagrams in our books, you may have noticed that it's kind of hard to follow. Exact locations for specific arteries are hard to reconcile between diagrams. Some arteries are only in a couple diagrams, and the shapes of them sometimes change between sources. So with that being said, I apologize if my diagrams are not 100% accurate. I gave myself more than a couple headaches trying to combine the diagrams in both our books together, and looked at a lot of other resources online to try to justify everything. And this was the best combination that I could come up with, which I know is a lot of excuses, but the end results should be good. So let me know if you know anything that I don't down in the comments, because I want to make this as correct as possible. We'll look at 3 different views since I don't want too many lines to crisscross, and it's easy to get lost otherwise. We'll start with the main arteries on the back side of the leg, then some of the hoof-specific ones as seen from the back, and then a combined image looking at the digit from the side. So hopefully once we've broken all of this down, it will make lots of sense from any direction to you, which is the main goal. So here we go. These are the main arteries. This first group is mostly the arteries that make loops around the bones, meaning that they supply the bones themselves with blood. But we'll start up top just above the fetlock, since it's important to know these arteries' names. There's a bigger one on the medial side, ever so slightly larger, and then a slightly smaller one on the lateral side. The medial one up here is called the medial palmar artery, and then the lateral one is the lateral palmar artery. Cool. And the word palmar is referencing the fact that it's on the back side of the leg. Then these arteries split off to the sides even further. Just proximal to the sesamoid bones is where we have that like bifurcation point. And they will become the medial digital artery, and the lateral digital artery. Cool. Now as we go down, we have some arteries that feed the cells around each bone. So these are the circumflex arteries. Up top, we have the circumflex artery of P1. So I'll write P1 circumflex. And then down around P2 in orange there, we've got the P2 circumflex. And then the next circumflex artery is this blue one here that wraps around the dorsal surface a little bit and then comes around the edge of that bottom edge of the coffin bone. So that's that P3 circumflex artery, which we often just refer to as the circumflex artery. Just keep in mind there's a circumflex artery for each phalanx bone. Wonderful. As the digital arteries go down, they also have a couple arteries that split off to feed that navicular region, one on top and one on bottom. So that would be on top the proximal artery of the navicular bone. And then below it, in green there, we have that distal artery of the navicular bone. So those are for that navicular bone there. And then as the digital arteries get all the way to the bottom, they enter into the coffin bone itself through a couple of foramen, which are these black dots. And they turn into a structure that we refer to as the terminal arch. That's an E. Arch. Wonderful. Then blood is pumped into P3 from there, kind of radially out from the terminal arch. So this is where the blood goes from the terminal arch, because it can't just like stop inside the foot or else the foot would break. Wonderful. So those are the main arteries of the digit. Here's a diagram that's more cleanly labeled if you want to hold on to that for your records, but there you go. And now there are a couple other arteries that don't just feed the bones of the digit, but the other structures of the hoof. These arteries also branch off of the digital arteries. So we've got our palmar arteries and our digital arteries. That's still the same, but up top, we've got in green a couple arteries that are reaching up at us, like out of the screen, back towards the heel bulbs. And these are the bulbar arteries. And they feed the structures on the back of the hoof. A lot of structures back there are cartilages and cushions, which don't have a huge amount of blood supply, so just these two main arteries will kind of do for them. Next down, we have in orange what is called the coronal artery. And it's located just below the circumflex artery of P2. That'd be kind of in the middle right there. So that's for reference, but that artery supplies the coronary band with blood. Then again, reaching kind of down and up towards us a little bit out of the screen, we have in yellow the paracuneal artery. Para meaning like around the sides of, cuneal meaning something kind of cone-shaped. But this artery goes around the sides of the frog corium, supplying that area with blood. It is kind of below or distal to all the other arteries here, and the diagrams in our textbooks are a little inconsistent on this one. It's hard to reason exactly how far up the leg it branches off of the digital arteries, but it's somewhere in the general region of the navicular bone, or a little bit higher, so it might come off like all the way up here, but it's hard to say for sure. I've never found it on a dissection, so I don't know. And then I left those navicular arteries in here, and the P3 circumflex, just for reference, because those are kind of still important ones. You just don't want to get lost in the chaos, but as you can see, it adds up to a lot very quickly. And then here's a more legibly labeled diagram of the arteries that pertain to the hoof structures. You can also save this for your studying if it's helpful for you. So there you go. And then lastly, here's everything together as viewed from the side. So you've got circumflex arteries for each bone in that dark red. You've got the coronal artery down below the circumflex of P2, the digital arteries joining and ending in that terminal arch inside of P3, the bulbar artery sneaking back to the bulbs, the paracuneal artery down around that frog area. Plus you can see the little navicular arteries on either side of the navicular bone, and that's pretty much what we need to know. So hopefully the color-coded diagrams are helpful and are combined together accurately enough to help you along in your studying. Another helpful video which helped me make sense of this topic is available on Gerard Laverty's YouTube channel. If you're having a hard time finding it, it's linked in my More Resources playlist on my channel's page. And you'd be looking for part 1 of his vascular system videos, though both videos are great and helpful. So he has a very useful channel if you want to check it out. That's Gerard Laverty. And now all of the artery stuff is behind us, so we can talk about the veins. We know that the veins bring the blood back up to the heart, and that the big veins have valves to help them achieve that purpose. The smaller veins form networks of interconnected blood vessels called venous plexes. Very important couple words. And those kind of funnel blood back up into the larger main veins that have the valves. Think of them as tributary streams to the main river. So when the hoof is compressed, it forces a lot of blood out of the venous plexes, but it traps some of the blood inside of them. And when that happens, the blood that's left inside is acting as a sort of hydraulic cushion for the hoof, aiding in shock absorption, which is why there are so many veins involved in a venous plexus. There are 3 main venous plexes in the hoof. One is around that coronary region. Think of like the coronary cushion being involved, kind of. One is around the dorsal surface of P3, covering the lamina. So, I guess the lamina. And then one is covering that solar surface of P3, like that solar corium area. And those are the 3 main venous plexes in the hoof. So here we go. If you want to draw these yourself, if you're doing your own hand-drawn diagrams, you'll want to think of it like drawing tree branches is the best advice I can give. Not that this is a perfect diagram, but here we go. So up top around that general region of the coronary band, up here, we have that coronary plexus. And then that's kind of in that blue color. And then below that in yellow, we have the veins that cover that laminar region here. So it's sometimes called the dorsal plexus or the laminar plexus. There's a lot of up and down lines in that. And then down on the bottom plane of P3, covering that bottom surface here, we have that solar plexus. Wonderful. And that's it. Those are the 3 venous plexus that we farriers should know. You can steal this screenshot as well if it's useful for you. So let's review, shall we? My main sources were again in Butler's P3 and Gregory's textbook, shown up top, with the general chapters and pages. But digging into it, we know that above the fetlock, the main arteries are called the medial and lateral palmar arteries, because they're on the back side of the leg. Then below the fetlock, now that we're in the digit, the main arteries are the medial and lateral digital arteries. Wonderful. Then, where do the digital arteries end? That would be in that terminal arch, which is inside of P3. We also learned that there is a artery for each phalanx bone that feeds it, which is called a circumflex artery. One around the middle of P1, one around the middle of P2, and then one around that distal border of P3. Think circumflex, think circumference, so around the outside. And then we have the 3 main venous plexes of the hoof: the coronary plexus, the laminar plexus, and the solar plexus. Wonderful. That's the main stuff. Great job, you made it. So hopefully now you could reason your way through and find the different arteries on a diagram and are now familiar with the main venous plexes. So we are now done making maps of the circulatory structures in the equine hoof. Fabulous. So we'll be carrying on with the circulatory system series in the next video, which will be all about the lymphatic system. I know that was a fairly mysterious topic for me for a while, but I watched a bunch of human-based anatomy videos about it, and I feel pretty comfortable with how I'm going to describe it, so I can't wait. Otherwise, we still have to break down how the circulation works in the lamina, but beyond that, we don't have a bunch of topics left to discuss in the circulatory system series. So the next series will either be diseases or tendons and ligaments. If anyone has a preference, just let me know in the comments, and you might just get your way. Otherwise, I'm currently leaning towards reviewing diseases, since I feel like there are a lot of videos out already about the tendons and ligaments, but I'm happy to do that first if you all insist. So, as always, any corrections are more than welcome. If I got something wrong in the process of making this video, just let us all know in the comments so we can learn together. If you have any other feedback, let me know that as well. I would love to hear it. If you enjoyed this video, a thumbs up will let me know that it didn't suck, which I always appreciate, or a thumbs down should set me straight if you hated it. So, thank you for watching. I'm looking forward to the lymphatic system video. Stay safe shoeing out there, and as always, stay tuned for more.